Well, what's going on YouTube? It's your boy Mr. Lux, aka the Married Gamer, and I'm back again with part 2 of our Xbox reveal commentary. And but again, let's lay the groundwork for the video that you're watching. You're looking at me playing with the MTAR. This is a league play game. I have the reflex sight with the silencer, and we're playing on the map Raid, I believe is the name of it. So anyway, let's get right into the goodness of this video. So part 2, I'm going to be mainly dealing with the finishing up on the architecture and also touch a little bit on the controller. But first, I want to go back a little bit I didn't touch on in part 1 was regarding the size of the Xbox One. It's quite large. It kind of puts you in the mind of the size of old school VCRs, like the VHSs. Those of you who were, born in the 70s and 80s know what I'm talking about. More or less around the 80s, you know what I'm talking about, what a VCR is. So it's a pretty substantial size. At least that's how it appeared on camera in relation to the controller. Because I'm going to assume the controller is pretty much comparable to the same size of the controller that we have in current gen right now. But I'm not surprised that it's that large, considering that I believe it does have a built-in DVR. I'm sure we'll know more about it come E3 and just all the horsepower that it's pushing. So I'm not surprised that it's the size that it is. If you think about, how the size of some of these top-end gaming PCs are. So, it probably has to have a lot of room for ventilation as well. But let's get right into the architecture. So, one of the things they talked about in the architecture was the new voice recognition with the Kinect sensor. Though it's supposed to be able to identify you by voice. So, for example, current gen, the Kinect sensor, if you say something, it doesn't matter if it's you or if it's somebody passing by in the room. If you say something and it's a command that the Xbox recognizes, then it's going to perform that command. So there's no bond between you and the Xbox Kinect itself. Well, now they're going to have this voice recognition that it's only going to respond to your voice. So whatever technology they went into creating that, I think that's going to be really nice. The Kinect is going to have a 1080p HD RGB camera, which is going to give a wider field of view. It's also going to recognize more joints in the Kinect skeletal structure, what they had talked about. There's going to be orientation where it recognizes the twist of your wrist and your shoulders, as well as your balance. It's going to be able to identify if you're on or off balance, which is going to come in real handy when you start playing those exercise games and those games that require you to have certain type of balance. Muscle and joint impact. Basically, it's going to detect the energy and read your heartbeat when you're exercising, and that's really cool. So I'm not really sure how that's going to work, how they're going to implement that, if it's going to require another attachment to go along with it. But being able to register the impact of if I'm shadow boxing, it'll be able to detect at what force I'm shadow boxing. So that's going to be pretty cool to see how that actually plays out. And it's also going to recognize depth. So, as the current model in Kinect, it's just more or less a little skeleton that they have, but this one's also going to recognize depth. So a lot more involved, it's going to be a lot deeper technology that we're going to be dealing with in the architecture for the Kinect. It's also going to have 30 frames per second in color. So that's going to be really cool. It's going to be able to track you and keep a good color as well throughout the frames. Also, he talked about time of flight technology, and basically what that is, it's going to measure time in about 13th billionth of a second. So really, what that means, that's a lot of savvy tech, bullet points. Basically, it means it's going to give you more accuracy and precision. So that's always going to be good. So that means it's going to be a lot more. When you play a game with the Kinect, or when you're using the Kinect, it's going to be a lot more precise in what it's recognizing you doing. So, and there was also another bullet point talking about microphone arrays. I'm not really sure what the microphone arrays are. That could tie back into that voice recognition. He really didn't go into it that much. And I forgot the gentleman's name again. His name was like Matt something, or his last name started with an M. But anyway, let's move on to the controller. So the controller, pretty much they pointed out that there was over 40 new design innovations. Again, a lot of that stuff is more tech talk than anything else. It's probably out of those 40 things they talked about, maybe only 3 or 4 of them we'll actually notice as the gamer. A lot of it's probably under the hood, a lot of tech stuff. So they did talk about it's going to be integrated battery compartment. A lot more. It's not going to, like in the current controller, you have your battery that kind of sticks out in the back a little bit. Could get in your way depending on how you hold the controller. I think most of us have already become quite comfortable, and it's just a natural feel for us with the current controller. But with the new integrated battery compartment, it's supposed to be a lot better, and I'm sure the controller will be a lot lighter as well. Impulse triggers. Impulse triggers, they're going to allow the developers to control feedback. So really what I take from that is when you're using the triggers, depending on how much pressure you use on those triggers, it can replicate different types of actions or commands within the game if the game is programmed like that. So I think that is going to be really cool and interesting to see how developers use that particular piece of technology right there. Wi-Fi Direct Radio Shack. I don't really know what that means, but I'm just assuming that it just means it's just, of course, they're wireless controllers. I'm pretty sure it's going to be a lot stronger signal to give better response time. And they talked about a precision D-pad. So I don't really know what that precision D-pad means, other than it may just be a lot more sensitive in terms of your commands. And instead of you pressing, when you hit left, instead of it thinking you're hitting like up left or down left, it's going to really recognize you're hitting left. Something like that. So that's what I take from precision D-pad. One thing I did notice on the close-up of the video they were showing of the controller that they never talked about was there were 2 soft buttons right in the middle, kind of similar to where the start and select button is on the current controller. One looked like it had like 2 overlapping boxes that kind of would put you in mind it may be like a tiles or a recent apps button. And then there was another one that had 3 horizontal bars, which is maybe like a menu button of some sort. Really not sure. They never really talked about it. And finally, the remote is going to be used, the controller is going to be used like a 6-axis almost, kind of where you can do motions with it and it reflect in the game. But stay tuned for part 3. It's your boy, The Married Gamer, and I'm out. Peace.